Welcome back. This is World Insight. Japan will begin releasing a second batch of wastewater from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant on October the 5th. On August 24th, Japan began the first of a four-round wastewater discharge into the Pacific. The move had received a backlash from foreign governments across the Pacific and even fishermen closer to come. Some countries have even banned Japanese seafood imports, for example, China. So what are the risks to countries across the Pacific Ocean? Are other containment options available? For more insights, let's loop in our panelists. In London, Isabel Hilton, founder of China Dialogue, a visiting professor at King's College London. In Beijing, Zhang Jianyu, executive director of BRI Green Development Institute. In Vienna, Anis Bazarek-Tarabish, professor and chairperson with the International Law and Global Studies. We are seeing the region is being divided between their opinions about the wastewater coming from Japan, nuclear wastewater. What is your opinion from where you stand? Isabel, very briefly from you and also from everybody else. One or two sentences to state what you stand for.
Nuclear power is always of concern because when things go wrong, it's very dangerous. But in terms of these releases into the ocean, they're much, much less than is routinely released by nuclear plants very close to where I'm sitting, either in the Channel or on the west coast of the UK.
Actually, there is an issue of water, and there is also an issue of the trust, and this contributes, to the existing demographic, economic. What is generally lacking in Asia is basically a confidence-building measures mechanism, which is indigenously Asian, and I think every issue is then an additional burden. So when we talk about the nuclear waste and release of water discharge, we have to take this into consideration as well.
So it's not just an environment issue, but also a trust issue. Mr. Zhang?
Well, I think the whole action is despicable, and because you cannot exchange for a short-term economic convenience with long-term, scientific uncertainty. And I think if the same logic applies, then we do not need to deal with anything on climate change.
So from a science perspective, anything uncertain should not be done. So that's very interesting. We certainly have three different opinions, but not necessarily only about the environmental standards, but more than that. So we have seen, Mr. Zhang, opinions are quite divided in the region, and recently we have been hearing rising voices coming from developing countries, particularly in the region, and that in the Pacific, for example, the Solomon Islands, talking about the danger of this discharge of nuclear wastewater coming from Japan. So how do you see this evolving debate? What is likely to be able to bring the two sides together, or it is just impossible?
Well, I think my view is practically this should have been, or it is a science-based question that needs to be open for discussion, and also to think about a holistic solution, including various alternatives of action. But rather, I think this has been elevated and colored with unnecessary political lenses, and now is going to a sort of, in my mind, a sort of unsolvable situation because it is not on anything anything on whether you agree with the science or not, is which sort of political camp you're standing in.
So environmental experts actually are being caught in between, it seems, Isabel.
And I agree that this has become heavily politicized, but I think one way to approach it is to look at what the science says and to look at what the international regulatory authorities say about how to deal with a very unfortunate situation such as the one that has arisen here. And you know, I sympathize with the idea that we should seek 100% certainty in science, but of course that doesn't exist, and we wouldn't build nuclear plants at all if 100% certainty was what we were looking for, because in addition to this incident, we have an ongoing problem of nuclear waste as we build more and operate more nuclear plants, and we haven't solved that either. So in the case of this water discharge, the big question is tritium. The International Atomic Energy Authority assures us that tritium occurs naturally at concentrations 7 times greater than the water that's being released into the Pacific. We would all wish this didn't have to happen, but there was an accident. It was much better handled than, for example, the accident at Chernobyl, which deposited airborne nuclear waste all over Europe. So, you know, if we have nuclear plants, there will continue to be accidents. And what we should be looking at is how the accident was dealt with, how the authorities responded, and what international science says.
It could be understood that people far from the Pacific might be looking at it from some of the specific lens, but those in the Pacific, as Professor mentioned, will be very much emotional about this because this is in their neighborhood, right in front of their courtyard. Yeah. So, Professor, go to you about that. So how is this going to set a good precedence about how to handle the discharge of wastewater? I think that's probably even a bigger question than this event itself, isn't it?
Exactly. There is always what is happening, how it is reported, and actually how it is perceived. You know, the international conduct is always, or is mostly based on the perception. We went to the First World War on perceptions, not on facts. And of course, as colleague was rightfully mentioning, there is a regulatory body, there is a watchdog actually just a few meters away. I'm just looking at the building here, International Atomic Energy Agency. They are inspector teams which inspected Fukushima Daiichi right after the earthquake and aftermath with tsunami. So there is a regulatory body, but it again comes, you know, and the way it is reported and denied and confronted in a verbal way, politicized, you know, so it doesn't contribute to the general climate of let's say, confidence building. One of the possibilities, and of course this mechanism exists with the International Energy Agency, is that we have a joint inspections. Bilateral, Asia, while even American and African continent, especially Europe, is multilateralized, Asia is strictly bilateral. And I think the time for Asia, you know, if Asia wants to continue with its prosperity, is actually to build a multilateral momentum.
Well, I really welcome the comments from my colleagues, but I think there are really 3 levels of issues that we're dealing with here. The first one is, as I said at the very beginning of my comment, I think it's an exchange of short-term economic convenience with long-term uncertainty, because my understanding is that there are other alternatives that you can deal with this rather than just discharging. You know, I major in environment engineering, and the first thing we learned when we went to college was that dilution is not a solution, and I think that's really what is happening here. I think without a deep dive into all the other alternatives and just go to the cheapest solution, absolutely something that we should prevent from happening in the first place. The second is our colleagues mentioned about the very long and challenging culture and regional relationships in the region. So I think even if Japan wanted to do it in the first place, they should have approached it in a different way of using diplomatic channels and also really to set up, tri-party or multiple party, coordination mechanisms to deal with this issue. In Chinese, was saying that, you cannot just sort of borrow lend a hand from a friend or an ally long way, to sort of to counter your neighbors who has a more great concern with the immediate action that's happening. And certainly, I think it's really the uncertainty. And I think in this world, we're dealing with many things with uncertainty that are probably not scientifically proven at this time, but has long-term consequences if we don't sort of factor that in. I mentioned climate change. That's how we team up the whole world fight again with climate change. Without IPCC, without the sort of so-proved scientific evidence, and I think the same theory apply here. If we just sort of yield to the short-term convenience, then there's many of the other issues that we don't need to deal with anymore.
Very interesting. Certainly a debate that's likely to continue as the second batch of nuclear waste going to be discharged into the Pacific Ocean as we speak. Thank you so much, Zhang Jianyu, Anis Vajraketerovich, and Isabel Houghton. Thank you. Appreciate it. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.